Well, you can't say I didn't try to warn you. You can't say that I wasn't spot on the money. I knew that I would be at this point, at this moment, after the 2014 NFL season with the Chicago Bears. Ha ha ha, I told you so. As unfortunate as it is, I was spot on when it came to this team before the season. I was trying to scream it from the rooftops loud and proud, whether it was here via video, whether it was at profootballspot.com where I was writing articles about the fact that this 2014 Chicago Bears team was incredibly overrated, overhyped, overpaid, and ultimately going to underproduce. And they lived up to every single one of my expectations and oh, who's so much more. And when I think about the Chicago Bears team and what happened in 2014, to me, it typically perfectly personifies what this organization has become and frankly has been for the most part throughout my lifetime as a Bears fan. A team that has years of poor decision making, in particular, poor drafting, an organization both internally and externally that has unrealistic, frankly, fantasy based expectations, lacking in proper leadership at the top, in leadership within the locker room. And it ultimately led to yet another season where this team didn't win a championship and came nowhere near doing so. 5-11, butt naked last in the NFC North. The Chicago Bears that so many people thought were going to be a playoff threat for whatever damn reason in the NFC, that many people were picking to beat the Green Bay Packers and win the NFC North, for what reasons are still unbeknownst to me, now has the 7th overall pick in the 2015 NFL Draft. And that in and of itself is so typical of the Chicago Bears. Even in a lost season like 2014 was, and even in a bad season like this was, with a bad team that I told you beforehand was going to fucking be bad, the Bears still found a way to screw it up and make sure, basically, that they assured themselves of too low of a draft position to be able to get a potentially franchise-changing quarterback. That is the perfect representation and personification of what the Chicago Bears are and have been and will continue to be until proven otherwise. Thankfully, this organization realized just how bad things truly were and didn't try to sit there and stay patient or stay the course. They realized that the nincompoops in charge of the day-to-day football operations, whether that be general manager Phil Emery or his choice as head coach Mark Trestman, were in over their heads and that they were idiots and that they were leading this organization down a path that was only going to get darker by the year. The ties had to be cut, and they had to be cut now. And they had to. There just was no argument. There was no other choice. There was no other option. And if you want the perfect representation and personification of the Chicago Bears' mediocrity as an organization, you look at the fact that instead of going out and ever hiring a real general manager with actual general manager experience, with successful general manager experience at that, the Chicago Bears' last 3 general managers have been Mark Hadley, failure. They hired a headhunting service in order to find Jerry Angelo, failure. And then they decided to bring in somebody that had once worked under Jerry Angelo as a regional scout, who in other places had largely been a failure, so that way he could come to Chicago and be a failure. And that was, of course, Phil Emery. There was a clown that once, at one point in time, actually suggested that Phil Emery was the future prototype of an NFL general manager. How stupid that idiot looks now. And if you really want the representation of what the Chicago Bears are and just how mediocre they are and just how poorly run of an organization they are, after 2012, they fired Lovie Smith after a 10-6 season. I didn't disagree. It was time to move on. It was. It was time to move on and begin a complete and total rebuild. Not with the Bears. They thought they were better than they were. They thought if they did this and they did that, they'd be right in the mix. And, of course, they were flat out wrong. And instead of hiring somebody on the market like a Bruce Arians or maybe an Andy Reid, somebody with some qualified previous NFL head coaching experience, they went to the CFL to find their guy, Mark Trestman, not realizing that, hey, maybe there's a reason this guy hasn't been coaching in the league in any capacity for almost a decade, and maybe there's a reason nobody ever went to him to make him an NFL head coach. His 2014 season, it was a disaster. I mean, I saw it coming, but it's still a disaster. And in fact, to be fair, even I didn't quite see this coming. I had them going 6-10. They went 5-11. I thought they would at least be better than Minnesota in the division, and they couldn't even pull that off. They went 1-5 in the NFC North. I talked about before the season, the only way the Bears had any shot in hell of being a competitive contending team in that division was to at least have a 4-2 record. And they went 1-5. They got swept by Green Bay in ugly fashion. They got swept by Detroit. And they even managed to lose to Minnesota in Week 17. If you're a Bears fan and you're part of the Bears organization right now, would you rather be the Bears or the Vikings? The Vikings went 7-9 and they've got Bridgewater. The Bears went 5-11, have to find a new general manager, a new head coach, and hopefully finally they've realized that their quarterback that they plunked all that money into absolutely fucking sucks. Only the Chicago Bears would sit there and make a mediocre NFL starting quarterback, Jay Cutler, the highest paid player in the league in 2014. They paid the guy Aaron Rodgers money when he can't fucking beat Aaron Rodgers, hoping that there was some type of magical Cutler pixie dust that they could just spray on the ass hat, and that 31 years of age, he was magically going to be 10 times better than he ever has been. That, again, represents the mediocrity of the Chicago Bears, paying A-plus money to a C-level talent. There were actually idiots like Michael Irvin and Brian Billick, people involved in the NFL, a Hall of Fame player, a Super Bowl winning head coach that you would think would know better. That actually implied, along with a lot of the idiotic Bears media, that Jay Cutler was a legitimate MVP candidate heading into 2014. What the fuck are you talking about? Instead, Cutler did what Cutler does. He led the league in turnovers and once again failed to start 16 games in an NFL season. This time, though, not to injury, to his credit. Instead, he was so bad he got benched for Jimmy fucking Clausen. Think about that for a second. Ever notice, like last year when McCown came in for Cutler, he played better in the system? And then Clausen got that start in Week 16 this year, and it seemed like he had a better grasp of the system than Cutler and moved the ball better in the system than Cutler. Isn't that a clue that there's a fucking problem here with Jay Cutler? Jesus Christ. But what else happened? Offensively, the offensive line struggled with injuries. This was an offensive line that lacked depth, as I referenced before the season, and I said I highly doubt that they're going to stay healthy, all 5 starters, all 16 games. They didn't have that continuity, and that was another contributing factor to the struggle. You're talking about an offense that was 23rd in points scored, 21st in total yards, 27th in rushing yards. An offense that was supposed to be so star-spangled awesome and so fucking elite, and it was going to take this team to the playoffs. Finished in the bottom half in several statistical categories. What's even more astounding to me is that with a running back like Matt Forte, one of the very best all-around running backs in the league, and nobody disputes this, they finished 27th in the fucking league in rushing yards. You have one of the best running backs in the NFL, and you don't properly deploy him. That's how idiotic Mark Trestman was, and that's how idiotic this Bears organization is. An offense that's so star-spangled awesome and elite, and the fans and the organization buying into this bullshit, scored 30 points 0 times in 2014. 0! An elite offense can't score 30 points one fucking time? Not once? Holy shit, man. And we haven't even gotten to the defensive side of the ball. I told you after 2012, the time had come for a complete and total rebuild of this organization, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Oh no, what do you know? You got to stick with it. You got to give me this. Shut the fuck up. I told you before this season that the moves they made weren't going to make this defense better. Fucking Phil Emery, or you call him Jerry Emery or Phil Angelo for all the fuck I care, because it's the same damn thing. Instead of fixing the run defense, which was the single biggest problem for the Bears in 2013, he decided to go get a bunch of pass rushers and then third-rate safeties in free agency. What happened? Oh, imagine this. Disaster again. 31st in the league in points allowed. 30th in yards allowed. 4 games with 30-plus points allowed. 1 game with 40-plus points allowed. 2 games back-to-back where they allowed over 50 fucking points. How does this happen? I'll tell you how it happens. It's years of poor drafting. It is years of terrible decision-making when it comes to free agency and personnel in general. There are 0 players left on this team from the 06 and 7 drafts. There's only 1 player left from the 2008 draft, and that's Matt Forte. There are 0 players left on the entire roster from both the 2009 and 2010 drafts. So those 5 drafts right there from 2006 to 2010, where these should be your veteran players, these should be your leaders, and these should be the guys that know the Bears way, if you will. The only one left is fucking Matt Forte. That's it. Out of those 5 drafts, and you go to even 2011, Angelo's last draft, only 2 guys left are Stephen Paille and Chris Conte. Paille had a solid year in Tucker's scheme, but Chris Conte completely fucking sucks and is a walking concussion waiting to fucking happen. And yet idiots think that he's a legit NFL starting free safety. What the fuck is wrong with you? So out of those last 6 Jerry Angelo drafts, you have a total of 3 starters, one of whom is Chris Conte, and the other 2 are Stephen Paille and Matt Forte. Not only are those the only 3 starters from those 6 drafts, those are the only 3 players left in the organization from those 6 drafts. And then once Knucklehead Emery comes in, he squanders and pisses away pretty much all the 2012 draft, where Alshon Jeffrey's really your only legit player from that class. Then in 2013, you get Kyle Long. He's your only legit player, and even then, he's a 26-year-old now right guard. So in his first 2 drafts, he managed to get 2 quality players on the offensive side of the ball, and one of them at that is already in his mid-fucking-20s. 10 opening day starters on this roster were age 30 or older. 9 of the opening day starters out of 22 were drafted by the Bears. So this was a team that got old in a big hurry, and then, of course, Knucklehead Emery decided, well, let's make them even older. When half of your starters were drafted by your organization, you're hurting in a very bad way. And it just shows just how bad of a position the organization's truly in. I mean, their free agent signings were largely bust. Willie Young was a stud, but he was an afterthought compared to guys like Lamar Houston and Jared Allen. Allen is exactly what the fuck I told you he was going to be in Chicago, and Lamar Houston, frankly, disappointed me tremendously. And instead of going out there and really addressing the safety position and throwing Mundy at it, they decided to address it with Ryan fucking Mundy. That is the mediocrity of the Chicago Bears. See a clear problem and then half-ass attempt to address it with a guy who was so good that several other teams said, well, he's not a starter for us. This team had this coming. It was going to happen. The bottom was going to fall out. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. And of course, instead of being a visionary organization, being a good organization, the Chicago Bears waited until it was too late. And if you think the bottom has completely fallen out of this organization, you are sadly mistaken. This team, this organization, drastically needs a Chicago Cubs type of top-down, bottom-up rebuild. Period. The longer they delay on it, the longer they set this organization back. That's the biggest need that they have in this offseason. It has to become fire sale time. It has to be time to find those people, somebody not named Ted Phillips, in the position where he can bring in a quality general manager and a quality head coach. They've taken away Ted Phillips' personnel power, supposedly. I'll believe it when I see it. But they need to find somebody that can find the quality general manager, the quality head coach, and Ernie Corsi. Well, then fucking make him the team president, god damn it! Gotta find a GM. And no, not somebody that's previously worked with the organization. Why in the fuck would I want to bring in somebody to be my general manager when he's been a part of all this shitty drafting over the past fucking decade? That makes no goddamn sense. And they need to find a head coach with some fucking personality, with some leadership skills. You don't go from Gerard's watered-down personality to Lovey's watered-down personality to Trustman's even more watered-down personality, and then find another head coach with the same fucking personality. No, that's not fan shit for the Bears. That's legitimate. If this style of leadership hasn't worked all this fucking time, you morons, you move on and go in a different direction in leadership. That's what you do in the business, where the Bears can't even run their business right. And if you think that this team doesn't need a total, complete rebuild, you're a fucking moron. If you think they don't need help on offense, clearly the numbers indicate you're a moron. They need a complete and total rebuild. And once they get the infrastructure in place in the front office, it's time to fucking find a young quarterback, build around him, and begin that path to becoming a champion.